Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
Hello and welcome back to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast. I'm Greg Oram, and with me, of course, is my podcast partner, Richard Spray. With us on the panel, we welcome Steve Battlemuch, and maybe in a while, we might welcome Scott Terry. He's down under, and the new year is upon them. So if he can get a chance to look in, we'll see him soon, hopefully. Last night at the City Ground, Nottingham Forest suffered a disappointing 2-0 home defeat to Everton, their third consecutive loss in the Premier League, and a result that will linger with the fans into the new year. Despite dominating possession and creating plenty of chances, Forest were undone by former Red James Garner, who opened the scoring in the first half before setting up Tierno Barry to seal the win for the visitors. Now then, Everton, fielding a slightly depleted squad with several key absentees, showed resilience and clinical organisation to grind out the victory, leaving Forest frustrated and fans angered. The Reds continue to struggle to convert pressure into goals, and the mounting pressure on Sean Dyche's side will be front and centre as we dissect what went wrong and what comes next for the Reds. Just the rousing fan base always need to try and cheer me up after a defeat. It was, you know what, we were saying before we came on air how we're feeling. And, you know, I'm trying to be as measured, and sleeping on it does help, Richard. But how are you feeling after that one?
Well, I mean, I was pretty livid as the match concluded yesterday. I mean, to the point of which I was supposed to be having meetings yesterday, and I really was probably the biggest sourpuss in those meetings because I don't think a lot got accomplished. It was me complaining about other things, but really just projecting my frustration about Forest. Yeah, I would say the most frustrating aspect of it is that we came in with all the advantages to win that match. We came in, I think, with a plan. They came in with a plan. The problem is their plan worked, ours didn't. And there was just at no point any evidence that we were going to be able to exploit anything that they were doing. And I think it's been stated elsewhere, but it bears repeating. The understanding that our coaching staff had of their personnel and how they function and operate week in and week out could never be exploited. That's the part that's a little bit maddening. And, you know, not just showing no creativity, no industry, no ability to make in-game adjustments, I think was another frustrating aspect of this as well. I mean, you often see in American football, for example, if you know that team is the worst team in the league at stopping the run game, then what do? You use the run game to your advantage. You don't just start throwing the ball over the field thinking that's gonna do anything. You have to exploit other teams' weaknesses, and it just seemed like we didn't make those adjustments in game until maybe the last 10 or 15 minutes of the match, where we actually started crossing the ball at a lower trajectory, thinking that maybe playing it to someone's feet in the box might be of value. So it's just that I think that's the frustrating part. We'll get onto the substitutions and things like that, I'm sure, in terms of how that played into it as well. But yeah, it's just really an opportunity lost again. You know, to go from playing against Man City the way that we did to be able to work behind them and to try to find ways. I mean, that goal we scored in that was emblematic of what should have happened in that match, which was finding that little ball through, finding someone, you know, in space, and then crossing it over in such a manner where we can take advantage. And we just never saw that. It just never materialized. So yeah, really disappointing that we couldn't, knowing what's coming ahead of us with fixtures and so on and so forth. It's like we couldn't somehow secure at minimum a point in that match, or even a minimum a point in the first time against Everton. Instead, we walk away with 2 losses and then a net difference of -5 against them, which is just unreal to think about, especially knowing who our manager is and knowing how he understands how they're going to operate.
Just going to let Scott in. He's just joined us from down under. How you doing, Scott? Thanks for coming on. I know that you are literally just gone 10 o'clock in the evening over in Australia. The New Year's approaching. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, Happy New Year. We've just been some fireworks down at the beach. I got a house full of people, so if it gets a bit rowdy here, apologies. But yeah, look, Happy New Year, everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Listen, I know that you've got, as you say, a house full. So whenever you need to nip out or you get dragged away, just just let us know, and we'll let you go. But I'll come back to you in a second. Let me say hi to Steve Battlemuch. Steve, were you there last night?
Yeah.
Well, give us the perspective from the stadium and all and how those multiple crosses. I mean, it was. I've made this joke before. There was more crosses than Easter, which would normally suit Jesus, but no wonder he was avoiding them.
It was. To be honest, I thought it was a bit flat in the ground. I was hoping for the atmosphere to be a bit more upbeat, but it was like we were saying, like the crowd was saying to the team, "Come on, show us something." And because we didn't get that early goal or anything, it just became a bit flat. Certainly in the Trent End where I was. I agree, Richard, that if anybody knows that Everton team as well as anybody apart from David Moyes, it's Sean Dyche and Ian Woan, and we failed to kind of turn that into any sort of advantage. And we're in a situation where, on paper, we had everything going for us last night in terms of the Everton team being threadbare. They had academy kids on the bench. Grealish wasn't starting. Some of their better players weren't there, either injured or AFCON. And that game should have been there for the taking. But just, some of the stats from last night are horrendous, really. We had 21 shots, but only 6 of them on target. And of the 6 shots we had on target, I can't remember Pickford having a difficult save to make out of those 6. So I suspect all of those 6 were quite tame shots. Everton had 3 shots, 2 of which were on target and scored from. Everton won 25 aerial duels. Everton did 53 clearances. We were just banging the ball in for Tarkowski and O'Brien to head away. It was like heading practice for them. And, the contrast is Everton's first goal. On the floor, decisive pass, somebody getting into space, Garner putting it in the corner. That's the sort of approach that we should have had, and we didn't. And it is pretty depressing, to be honest.
Yeah, very depressing. I want to say good morning to Bruce in Texas. He's still frustrated over yesterday. Colin Robinson, good morning. And Daniel Hall, he says, good evening from Sydney. Yet, Daniel, I'm not read the email yet regarding Every. Daniel was the winner of our shirt, and Every have just been a disaster with that. And I don't think it's been delivered yet, or it's got lost. But we'll work it out. I'll speak to the club and I'll reply to your email. Wolfie from Forest Fan TV says 52 crosses, as does Paul Griffin. 52 crosses could be the name of a group or an album cover or something, couldn't it? But Scott, I mean, you were watching from down under last night, I imagine, or whenever it was, whatever time it was. How did you see it all?
Yeah, it was an early kickoff here down in Australia. It was a 5:30 kickoff for me here in Queensland and 6:30 for Sydney and Melbourne. Yeah, a tough game to watch. You mentioned Steve mentioned the crosses, and you could just see it every time. And I was sitting there. My dad's here at the moment, and he got up to watch the game with me. And we were sitting there, and we were like, how many times are we just going to cross the ball in? And they just seem to deal with it. Just so, Tarkowski and I think O'Brien with their centre backs, they just seem to deal with it so easily. And when I was like, well, what can we do to mix it up? What can we do to change? Because this clearly isn't working. And I think one of the things which we really struggled with was the fact that Dyche is a former Everton manager. He knows what their strengths are. He knows the fact that they have big, tall central defenders, a robust defence. So for them to, for us to sort of continue with that that just didn't feel quite right for us. It was a frustrating game. I felt second half we were slightly better, and I think as Steve mentioned as well in terms of the shots on target or shots in total versus shots on target. Just a frustrating game for us. It really was, it didn't feel good at the end. We sort of, and I guess a saving grace for us was the fact that it was 2-2. The Hammers only, it was 2-2 in their game, so therefore they only got 1 point, and they still didn't, because at times they were actually leading. So for me, that was something which made me feel slightly better when we lost 2-0. That's 5-0 on aggregate. How can we be losing 5-0 on aggregate to Everton? and I get sorry, a massive tangent. I've obviously had too many gin and tonics, but if, if it's like,
right.
it's like if a team like Everton who aren't scoring a lot of goals, and there was some stats that came on the TV when I was watching it, they don't score a lot of goals, yet they've scored 3 goals when at home when playing us, and then they scored 2 more goals. The geezer, is it Barry? I think Barry was the striker's name. His only 2 goals he scored was one against us when they played at Hill Dickinson, when we played them a few weeks ago, and last night. And I was sitting there thinking, how can this guy, who is not the great goal scorer, only be scoring against us? It just didn't feel right. And there is a lot to look at, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Anyway, I need a gin and tonic too.
I mean, that's a typical Forest stat, though, isn't it? The guy can't score, but the only goal he's got is against us. I mean, that's a Forest thing all over. And we can't keep looking at the table and just looking and hoping that West Ham and Leeds and others slip up and think, well, that's okay. Then it hasn't been so much damage to us. We wanted to pick up points against Fulham and Everton because that would have really given us a boost in our own, of our own making in terms of rising up the table slightly. We've seen what a few wins can do. Look at Fulham. They were really down there with us. If we'd beaten them, we'd have gone above Fulham. They've put 2 or 3 wins together, and I think they're now top half of the table or thereabouts. Same goes for Brentford, who have put a few wins together. Same goes for Bournemouth, who have been losing. They're dropping down. So it is still really tight, Richard. But we have to start putting our finger out. So I'm with you boys on the confusion when it comes to the tactics of crossing the ball so much for Tarkowski to head away time and time again, or O'Brien to get involved. There was one opportunity, and this was actually at 1-0 down, but I'll bring it up now, Rich, when Callum just seemed to misjudge that he was going to get the ball. And the ball kind of flies over, and it does be, I think it was Patterson who kind of missed it. And Callum had the opportunity then to really pull us back into the game. But he was just off it last night. There was another one later on where, again, he misjudged that he was going to receive the ball when he handballed it. So, we've got to be taking our chances when they come. I mean, they're few and far between, aren't they?
Yeah, and I give Nico credit. I mean, of the quality of crosses that needed to come in, he was the one delivering them, and I thought he played really well last night. In fact, I thought he and Anderson probably were 2 of the best players for us on the pitch. He looked good on that right-hand side. I mean, we know how adaptable he is. We know how well how consistently he's gonna play. Of all the times we've used the word inconsistent in relation to the overall team performance, he's the one who ends up being the one who's consistent, match in and match out. So he delivered that ball, and he had 2 players sitting right there in a perfect position, probably to execute a perfect shot to try to put it in the back of the net. And that I believe one of them was Jesus. He had kind of pulled back slightly as Callum was ready to receive the ball. To your point, he probably didn't expect it to actually fall over the defensive line to his feet, and all he had to do was just tap it back to one of them, and we're probably looking at a goal. So, and to Steve's point, I think just invariably when we looked a little bit slow coming out of the gate, but then we sort of started to pick up some momentum. And then as soon as that goal went in, it was like everything just shifted. Then we felt like we were just perpetually chasing the game. And it was those kinds of moments. And I hate to put it in these terms because I've definitely been far more positive about the way that Dyche has handled the team, stabilized things, helped us feel a little bit more like we had opportunities to progress as a team up the table, as you pointed out. And we certainly gotten those key wins at times against teams like Liverpool and against Spurs. But the issue is that looked like very much like an Ange performance, just a ton of opportunity with no execution. And that's, he'll learn from it, I believe. I think he'll come away from that thinking, clearly whatever I was either he was telling them something that was never going to work from the get-go, which was, again, bizarre, or the guys just didn't execute what he asked. And so, because I think he mentioned after the match too, there was that lack of quality at certain points, a lack of transition or change in how they were approaching the match individually to then as a team have a better outcome. And so maybe there's some aspects of things that they weren't really putting into practice that he drilled into them. But yeah, it was just a strange one. And Callum was showing signs of progressing and being more of what we saw towards that second half of the first season with Forest. And then that match was the opposite, right? He just reverted back to, I don't know if it's fatigue, what it is, but he just didn't look mentally sharp throughout them. And I would say Jesus was in the same camp. He just didn't look like himself. Heavy touch, wasn't linking play up, wasn't holding things up well. And so there was just isolated performances, I think, there that were just a bit off the mark from what we're used to seeing from them. So
first 6 minutes or so, we couldn't get a look in. Then we started to get more of the ball. And I actually thought Callum looked quite lively, to be honest with you, in the first sort of 30 minutes. He was making a lot of running, and Forest had more possession, which is an unusual stat for them. But it's that inability, Steve, to do something with it. And I'm worried now about how we don't penetrate enough. I mentioned this, that the 3-0 result against Spurs was a fantastic performance, but those goals were kind of out of the blue goals. All three of them. One was a mistake from them, and the other two were world-class shots that on another day don't go anywhere near the goal. So it's not like we kind of carve teams open. The one goal we have scored where we really put together some lovely football was the one against Man City at the weekend, where we came out from the back and moved up the pitch on a counter-attacking football. And that was pure Forest. That was such a wonderful goal to see. We want to see more of that, but it's not happening enough. Are you able to put your finger on why that is? Is it because even though Deitch has got supposedly the best set of players he's ever worked with, is that he's still reverting to the stereotype that follows him around? Bringing Taiwo on for Igor Jesus, wants that big man up front when Calimuendo's on the bench. And I also will add quickly before I do get to you, Steve, that players do seem to become better players when they're not in the side. Their stock rises, doesn't it? Everyone goes, oh, well, why isn't he playing? He should be playing. Well, actually, Deitch said afterwards in the post-match, he was asked by Colin Fray, and he kind of reading between the lines was saying, well, look, we see him in training and he ain't good enough. That's basically what he was saying. And so he's not getting picked. So is it a case that Deitch is being a little bit too kind of stuck in his traditional ways, do you think, the way he's playing, setting up Forest to play?
Well, Deitch has got a squad that he didn't pick any of them, did he? He's inherited a squad from 2 managers ago. And our transformational season last season was created by having a goal scorer that scored with every third shot that he had. So we didn't create loads of chances, but when we did, Chris Wood put them in by and large, and Alanga was tearing down one wing and Callum was going down the other. And that last season now stands out as a bit of a outrider, doesn't it? 50% win rate last season, 24% win rate in the first 2 seasons back, 26% win rate now in this season halfway through. I mean, we've lost as many games now in this half season as we lost in the whole of last season. 11 games lost. So we're in a scrap. We can't buy a win in this current round of 3 games. And I take your point that we sort of play better, it seems, or we hold our own against teams that are full of better players. Maybe seem to be the big games, the Tottenhams, the Liverpools away. God, do we need to take that into Villa? Because there'll be a lot of people now looking at the fact that we've lost 3 on the bounce under Dyche. But I think that the real problem is we just are not scoring goals. I mean, the stat that only Wolves have scored less than us is really worrying. And that's what I think we've got the problem. He clearly don't fancy Calimuendo. He's having to play him in Europe because he feels he needs to change it around a bit in Europe. But the fact that he's preferring Taiwo, who everybody can see is way off the mark. The fact that he's preferring Taiwo to Calimuendo in the last 2 or 3 games from the bench is just bizarre. There was an audible sigh last night in the Trent End when the subs' names went up, and that was added to, I think, within the first minute when Taiwo did an air shot. He just kicked straight over the ball, and you just kind of think, nothing is going for us in that penalty box at the moment.
Gave him half an hour, Steve. He put him on a 60 minutes as well. So it's like,
and he did like for like. He didn't go too up front, did he? Which many people around me were calling for. Why haven't we changed it up? Why haven't we gone maybe 3 at the back and pushed up and put 2 up front? It was a bizarre move, and I'm glad Colin Fry asked him about it. And it was a bit of a cryptic answer, saying, "Oh well, we have to go off the data and what we see in training." But unless Callum Morendo is sat in the training sessions playing cards and having a fag, if he can run and he can shoot, he should be on that pitch when we're struggling.
And his strengths are making runs, creating opportunities for other players that are supposed to be creative, right? And have that precision and that vision, like a Luis, to find him on those runs. He can be quicker than the players behind him, and I think he definitely would have been quicker, likely, than Tarkovsky. And that's the part that I just don't get. It's like, okay, fine, you're fitting Taiwo in because he fits the profile of what you want to do, but that was inept. It wasn't working. So where was the transition to something that was going to give you a different dynamic? And that's what Callum Morendo does. And I think, to your point, Steve, I think that statement that he made, it just begs to the obvious, which is, I think he's going to be moved on, because if he's not going to pick him over a guy who clearly is off it. I mean, there was that other point where the ball was played across the box beautifully, and any other person in that situation may have honestly had a real chance to put it home. But Taiwo was too slow to actually be able to react to it and be able to slot it home. Whereas a Callum Morendo or someone else, maybe even Jesus in that scenario, probably would have given it a better go. And so it's just like, what are you seeing in training from Taiwo that tells you, because nothing that's happened and nothing manifests itself on the pitch in live games to tell you that he's gonna be the thing that creates impact for you coming off the bench. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting a little bit angsty again. I'll put myself on mute.
Okay. I mean, it was one moment of quality, I think, in the first half. That was Everton's, Scott. I mean, I mentioned in the WhatsApp group that Dwight McNeil was going to come into this game and haunt us in some, way. And sure enough, he's the one that drops into that kind of hole. He drops off. The ball comes to him. Beautiful ball gets threaded through. Garner, who we know is a great player, finishes. I mean, just on McNeil, there's been talk that we're going to try and sign him, and everyone's turning their noses up. What's your view on that, Scott? And do you put anyone at fault for that goal? Was Gibbs White switching off? Do you blame the goalkeeper? Could the keeper have saved that?
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple of sort of lines there that the actual if you actually watch the replay of that, Gibbs White does seem to drop off him. He doesn't seem to sort of mark him straight up front, and then he only moves to him when the ball comes there. So there's a question there around Gibbs White. The keeper, it's interesting that he's played that Daichi is playing John Victor now over Matt Sells, and he's done it for the last couple of games. Is that a potential? Is that a chance which you would expect a keeper to save? It was all a very quick shot. I'm not so sure whether I'm sure there's some stats on it as well, that whether it should have been a shot which should have been saved, or it should have been something which went in. But it was quite a quick turn. And of course, it had to be Garner, didn't it? James Garner, a guy who obviously played for Forest and then moved to Everton years ago. It just felt like a right kick, kicking in the what's there exactly, and
kicking the bollocks. You can say it. It's fine.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. So it was a pretty tough, because we'd been up to that point. We had been, and I think you've already covered this, so many crosses going in, so many crosses going into the box. They were just dealing with it. It just felt like it was just trying the same thing over and over, and we knew what we were going to get. We knew that they were going to clear the ball, so it was quite frustrating in a way. And so when Deitch brings on Taiwo, and you think, well, he needs a guy that's going to exactly run into channels, run into those spaces where maybe the defenders aren't so quick, so therefore we can take advantage of that. And he just didn't seem to go. He brings on Taiwo, another big solid body in the middle, trying to win the ball, hold it up, pass it off to people. but we needed someone to run the channels, to run through and create opportunities in a different way. So it was pretty frustrating. I'm not sure I've actually answered the question you asked me, but
No, you didn't. It's fine. Yeah. What I would say, I've mentioned as well that, John Victor is the goalkeeper now. It's happened with an injury to Matt Sells, but normally your number one comes back and gets put straight back in. But I just think there's something going on there. I've said it before. I think Matt Sells is going to be leaving the club maybe in January. Probably not, but at the end of the season, I think he'll be leaving the club. I'm not saying that I think that's right or wrong. I would be having Matt Sells in goal personally. He would have come back from it being injured, and I'd have put him back in goal. Was John Victor at fault for the first goal? Not at fault, but I think the XG was pretty low from what I've looked up. I think the XG was pretty low. It's difficult to say whether the keeper should have saved that. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, and all that kind of stuff. But we had so much possession, get my teeth back in, and did naffle with it. And that was a really frustrating thing. We played Zinchenko in this game, switching Nico Williams over to the right-hand side. And I kind of got it thinking, well, look, there's no Njai for them. Again, we went into this game looking at the Everton team, thinking, well, there's no Njai and there's no Keenan Dewsbury Hall and there's no him and all the rest of it. And you almost get carried away thinking, come on, this is the game we can really win. We should really be testing this Everton team. But as much as Deitch and his two coaches, Stone and Wone, should know so much about this Everton team to get the upper hand, it feels like they just know too much about Sean Deitch and they got the upper hand on him home and away. And that's the real problem. That's the real sore point for us. So, Richard, we play Zinchenko. He's coming in to invert. I don't think he had a terrible game. Again, I think a lot of the players are getting crucified because we didn't win. But on another day, the amount of possession we had, you could end up winning that game 1-0 and everyone says, well, we dominated that and we got the win. We came away, actually, didn't get the win. Zinchenko gets criticism. The other players get criticism. Dominguez started but went off at half-time. Douglas Luiz comes on in the second half, attempting to try and get the game going. First 10 minutes, second half, I kind of thought, okay, we're back in this now. We're really kind of probing. But it all just kind of came to nothing again. Why weren't Forest trying something different? It was still a lot of crosses going in onto those heads. Why? I know that we don't know the answer, but try and give me something. Why are we not trying something different? Is it an inability in these players? Are they not as good as we think?
Maybe it's just you could look at it if you want to try to be a little bit out of box with your thinking on this and maybe try to find some sort of logic to what was happening. You could say, well, I think maybe he felt like by adding some of the little bit different quality on the ball, it might unlock something. It might provide a different look to them by bringing Luis in, which, he's been very good about not letting things linger in terms of what personnel is on the pitch. And he'll make those changes to try to generate a little bit more energy, a little bit different approach to the game. Maybe he has such an innate belief in the talent level of those players and what they can do together as a collective. And so he thought, well, you know what, there's going to be ways to break them down, because he knew the personnel was lacking on their side of the pitch, but yet it wasn't enough change. It wasn't enough deviation from that what had been the norm to be able to find those crevices and those ways to break them down and those pressure points. I don't know, to your point, exactly what the thought logic was. I'm just trying to imagine maybe he just has such stubborn belief in what our players are capable of because he's seen them execute it, to his point about what he's seen on the training ground. But like I say, that only replicates so much, especially when they're bringing in players that we've never really seen before. So there's not a lot of, film on those kinds of players to figure out how do I take advantage of that, right? But as a general whole, you're right. It still begs the question, what exactly did he believe was going to take place? And then when it clearly wasn't working, where was the conversation? What was the conversation between he and Wone and Stone as to how they transitioned to a different mode of operating? And that, I don't know. We don't have the answer to that at this stage. Maybe someone will ask him that question in the next press conference or what have you. But it definitely felt like maybe it was just a stubborn belief that those players could do something different. Even if it wasn't changing the overall tactic in and of itself, it was the way that they executed each individual pass, each individual moment to get the ball in the box, maybe that he thought was different. I mean, you did see Nico try to press up a little bit higher, try to create a little bit more with Hutchinson in the second half, try to give him opportunities to get into space, to try to get a cross off, because he can, he can be pretty effective. I mean, I think he's our leading assist person at this point. So maybe there's a little bit of slight changes there that weren't as evident because there was a lot of crosses still coming in. So it was a bit masked by the fact that that was still happening. But I don't know, man. I wish I had I wish I had the magic elixir. If I was in the mind of Sean Dyche, I'd probably be doing something other than what I currently do for my career. But I definitely feel like there was maybe just a stubborn belief that those players could do something, because he did mention the fact that he thought they weren't putting in individual performances that would have garnered a better outcome in the end. And certainly the end product should have been better, I think, in his head, based off of what he had probably established in terms of a plan coming into the match. But but I mean, it's just an odd way of approaching a football match when you clearly see that it's ineffective. You don't do anything different at all, even if it feels 180 degree. Change it. Yeah. It's not working.
The last episode of 2025. Please do go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Please do join us in 2026. You can subscribe and never miss a Talking Reds episode. We like to review the games as well as preview them. We will be doing more one-withs in 2026 as well, and mixing it up as much as we can to bring you some fresh content whenever we can as well. Just kind of finishing the game off then, Steve, we pushing for a goal, and of course the typical things happens. Douglas Luiz loses the ball pretty much on their edge of their box, and they break. James Garner had his best game probably ever last night. I thought we had an Everton fan in the comments as well. Stephen's with us. Welcome, Stephen. He's enjoying the win. He asked earlier, could we play you 38 times a year? I'd probably be feeling the same way as you. But he was talking about James Garner a minute ago, saying that James Garner's been their best player for a year. And we know about him, don't we, Steve? We know his quality. And fair play to him. And I'm really pleased for him that he's getting the plaudits. There was talk that we were going to try and sign him in January. I mean, your thoughts on that? But the way he turned and skinned Murillo was a concern for me, because he did that and threaded it through for Tiano Barry to score his second goal against Forest and his second goal of the season. And that was the end of that, wasn't it?
Yeah, look, Garner was class last night, both in terms of what he performed on the pitch, but the way that he paid respect to Forest as well by not celebrating in front of the Trent end. And also I saw a bit of an interview he did after the game where he said he owed our club so much for his career. And, you look back at that summer, Man U played hardball with us all summer over Garner. They didn't sell him until the last day of the transfer window, by which point we'd bought a load of midfield players already. But, Everton got him at a steal. I was surprised last night to find out he was out of contract in the summer. So I'm not sure I'd take him over Morgan Gibbs-White, but I'd certainly take him back into our squad if we had an opportunity.
Steve, I'm just going to interrupt you just for 1 second, because I know Scott's got to go. So I want to just quickly say to Scott, thanks for hopping in, buddy.
No worries at all. Apologies, Steve, to interrupt, but it's getting very noisy here, and I'm just mindful that it's good. So happy New Year, everybody! Come on, you Reds! Let's have a couple of good performances the next couple of games. Villa, and then West Ham, big games. We need the wins. But anyway, happy New Year, everybody! Take care. Thank you very much, and come on, you Reds! Cheers. Bye bye.
Cheers. Take care, buddy. All the best. Bye bye. Sorry, Steve. I wanted to make sure we gave Scott a chance to say goodbye properly. You were giving us the James Garner breakdown. I mean, he's been really good for them, hasn't he?
He has, and he showed that bit of quality twice, didn't he? The through ball for their first goal. The way he took the first goal and the through ball. And like you say, not many people do that to Murillo, where he just gets completely turned. I mean, Murillo's a strange one, isn't he? Because, at times you can say he's world class and he's, making blocks on the line and this, that, and the other. And then sometimes he switches off a little bit. Like last night, I think he put about 3 or 4 passes wrong in the first half, just gave the ball away to someone or put it out of play. He got turned by Garner. But, you know, he's still a young lad, isn't he? You know, this is a team where we've got a fairly young squad, I think. We've got a squad that's Dyche has inherited, that were signed by the recruitment team, hence Nuno them buggering off in a huff. We're in a situation where games are coming thick and fast, and Dyche clearly has already decided which ones he trusts and which one he doesn't trust, which is going to make January fascinating, because I agree. I suspect there's going to be a couple of players leaving, either on loan or sale, but who we get in to replace them will be absolutely crucial, because, you know, January is not a good time to buy players, because if you've got a good goal scorer, you're not going to sell them in January, are you? So
No.
unless we've got some gem that nobody has spotted, that Marinakis has done a mega deal on, you worry a bit. But we've got to stabilise over the second half of the season, because we are in an absolute relegation scrap now. No doubt about it. You look at the stats that I mentioned earlier, our win percentage, all the rest of it, the lack of goals. But the league is very, very tight still. You know, I know some of those mid-table teams are pulling away from us a bit, but 2 or 3 wins and you're right back in it. But it's where are those 2 or 3 wins going to come from?
It was a very disappointing result last night and a missed opportunity again. And we can't keep talking about missed opportunities. Yes, teams around us failed to capitalise. We play West Ham in a week's time, and that's going to be the proverbial 6-pointer, of course. But Steve touches on the next part we're going to be discussing, which is January, which is how we shake things up. So we'll be back after this very short break to talk about where Forest are at the moment, where they might get to, and who might be coming in and who might be going out.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
Everybody loves cheese, don't they? I mean, they really do. And I can't say this enough. I mean, I had some cheese off Stu again for Christmas, and the selection is fantastic. And so support a fellow Forest fan in his business. He's always super busy at Christmas, but he's an absolute legend. We're going to be talking about his new book that's coming out in the new year, so keep your ears and eyes peeled for that. You get 10% off when you quote Talking Reds if you go to the Cheese Trader. All the information is in our bio. All right. Okay. January is here. And so we need a striker. That's what I asked for Father Christmas for Forest for Christmas. We need a striker, I think, with Wood being on the missing list, and we don't know when he's going to come back. None of us got any faith in Taiwo. And so even though he's been playing, maybe that's a guise to try and get him sold. You know, we've been playing him and, you know, he needs regular football. Cali Mwendo clearly not fancied by this manager. And we know that he was brought in under Nuno. But again, we don't know if he was brought in by Nuno, because the recruitment that time was being managed by Edu and others. And it felt like some of the players that were coming in, Douglas Luiz and Omari Hutchinson, for example, came in against the grain of Nuno. Maybe he didn't want those players. Omari Hutchinson, we saw, didn't get started at all really under Nuno, Orange particularly, and he's now come to the fore under Sean Dyche. So we know that, you know, when you have instability in the management setup, that players can struggle or they can blossom. It really is a question of who fancies you or who doesn't. Clearly, we have some quality players. So McAtee, Cali Mwendo, who I've already mentioned, 2 players there that we have been scratching our head about as to why they haven't been getting game time. Bakwa's been injured. We know that. So he's coming back into the fore now. Danny Doy's had a lot of game time, but he's now injured. Chris Wood, injured. So we have places and spaces within this squad now that we need to kind of rejig, Richard, I think. Willy Bolly over in AFCON. I think Danscape mentioned earlier in the comments that we've definitely missed his influence in these last 3 games, but it's probably more Sangare who we've missed. We haven't mentioned him as well. I mean, the Sangare performance against Spurs was exceptional, so that's what we've missed. But maybe just the way he's developed into the player we always wanted. Had he been around, maybe we've missed him more than the other teams have missed their AFCON players, because we played Fulham and Everton with loads of AFCON disruption and they both bloody beat us. So what does that say about us? So, yeah, Rich, I'm coming to you and give us your take then on what you think January should look like. So we've got Kouibano, we think, coming back over from Botafogo. There's no return clause, we think, for Zinchenko, but that doesn't mean that nothing could happen. We've got a striker issue. And one more thing I'm going to mention, and the more I've thought about this, the more I'm getting carried away with the idea of Sam Surridge coming back to Nottingham Forest. But it was mentioned the other day, I think Dave Thompson mentioned it, but he's scoring goals left, right, and centre for Nashville. When you need a striker, and even if it's a loan, I'd take Sam Surridge back in a heartbeat at the moment. I mean, he was supposedly the best finisher at the club when he was there. But again, am I guilty of looking at a player and boosting his performance levels because he's no longer at the club, or am I just desperate for a striker? And one more thing, Strand Larson at Wolves, who I liked, there's talk that he is going to be out the door at Wolves in January. Could he be a target? Where are you at, Richard Spray?
Okay, so with the Strand Larson scenario, I think the price point's going to be too much. I think he's going to command more money just based off of previous years where he's shown quality, right?
I don't think they will get anywhere near the money.
100%. But I think based off the fact that we have spent a lot of money, I don't think that that's reasonable, but it's going to require that to get someone of quality. The one thing I would say about Sam Surridge is this. What do you think the ratio is of goals that a striker could score if he's putting in 24 for Nashville in the MLS? Could he maybe conjure up a third of that? I mean, if we get a third of that, that's a clear upgrade. I mean, anything above 1 goal, which I think is the amount of goals Taiwo has scored in the last 46 games. So
he's also tall. He fits the goal
exactly. And he's not, what is he, 26, 27? So he's not, I mean, he's still in his prime. So, I mean, I think from nostalgia's sake, right, because we've seen him play so brilliantly in the championship season where we got promoted, he was a huge part of that. I think he came on and scored key goals for us, right? And he had a history, obviously, with Cooper, I think, at Swansea. I think he maybe had him at Swansea as well. So, look, I would not be upset with that. I think in terms of a bargain purchase, would he like to come back to the Premier League and he not know he's not going to start, but he might get spot starts or he might get certainly minutes off the bench? Because to your point, where else is it coming from with an unknown timeline associated with Chris Wood? Then you've got Callum Mwendo, who clearly is not favored, as you mentioned, and he doesn't offer the same skill sets that Sam Surridge. Yeah, exactly. So I would imagine Callie gets a loan. It's possible that maybe McAtee gets a loan, because I will still contend this. I think right now you can make the case based off of his playmaking ability that you could move Amari into that 10, right? I think he can do that role. I'm telling you, man, he did it for Ipswich as well.
But we lose his.
But listen, no. Well, here's the thing, though. You have some coverage in that arena. You have Bakwa who can come in and play on that right hand side. I'm not going to say he's better than Amari. I'm just saying there's some versatility and opportunity there. If you think giving McAtee a loan, getting him playing time, and then bringing him back in, because if you don't think he's going to get enough minutes, because in the end, I think Bruce put it out there, all the training ground work that you can do is great. Getting them to understand what you want them to do and how you want them to execute things is fine. But until you see it in a live game action, it doesn't matter. It's just not going to be as effective. You're not going to really understand. A litmus test is not going to be clear enough when it comes to that. I just think we need a goal scorer, period. I think we need somebody that and I know this is almost impossible to find without spending a serious amount of money for it to try to pry them away from another club, right? There's got to be enough. I mean, we've done a good job with recruiting and finding good players that we've been able to develop. Yes, they've taken some time to acclimate and become better. Alanga being a perfect example of that, right? But we're clearly missing. There's a gap there. Morgan is not putting in the performance level that we expect. He'll look good one game, he'll look terrible in the next game, right? Or he'll just not be doing anything. And so for a number 10 to operate that way, we just cannot do that. And I love the guy. Trust me, I do. But I just
dropped off. He's dropped so much
significantly. Statistically, he's regressed from the previous 2 seasons, because you can show some progression from a goal scoring and goal contributing action standpoint anyway, year over year. But that's not there right now, and I don't know what the missing ingredient is. That's my point. You need someone to impact the game. Whether that means that person gets assists, whether that means that they get goals and assists, there's got to be some type of impactful person, because I do believe Jesus has the propensity to score goals. I just think he needs to be put in a position to do that. Yes, he's got to finish, but we've seen Wood miss sitters, and as good as he is. So you've got to have people who can unlock those players. That's what Alanga did for Wood last season. We don't have that right now. Callum's not contributing that. Hutchinson has been good, right, with limited playing time. Now he's become favored, which is understandable, because he was good last night too. I think Daniel Hall said that in the comments. I thought he was much better than we're probably giving him credit for. It's just there was no, I do think it's that. We need somebody impactful, however that is, to unlock these players that I think have the capability. It's not coming right now. And so where that comes from, I don't know. It's a difficult thing to know, because we haven't looked at the landscape of players. We haven't done our scouting thing yet, right? We've kind of been slow to do that, because we've been fixating on how inconsistent the team has been in general. But yeah, I do think that's what it is: a goal scorer or just an impactful player of some sort. And that could mean, maybe you have to accept a lower price point from Morgan. I love the guy; he served the club very well, but there's something going on there that's just not right, and it's not doing for us what we need him to do. Because I hate to say it, Morgan Rogers, other players out there that have been brought from championship level are doing things that we're just not getting out of our number 10. And we can't have that. It's just not, it won't work for us going forward. And we have all said, when you look at the statistics, when his performances are poor, we're poor. Right? There's just where's the game-changing sort of individual coming off the bench or already on the pitch that when you insert somebody else to pair along with them can unlock something. We're just not seeing it, and that's the unfortunate part. But yeah, I would say for me, you've got to find that guy who can create impact in some capacity, whether that's assist or goals or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, Sean
easy
Dyche,
to say, obviously.
No, you're right. Look, with what we have to also underline, right, is the absolute roller coaster that we've been on. And it started so badly, all the Nuno stuff, hiring Ange. I mean, we're in a negative 8 games with Ange, where we picked up, I think, 2 points. And the effect that has had cannot still be underestimated. So bringing Sean Dyche in was the right thing for this team and this squad. And if you think about where we were when he came in, I mean, I can't remember. We were like at second bottom, and I think we were like 4 or 5 points off of safety. And now we're like above the drop zone, albeit in 17th, 4 points away from the drop zone. So the impact is there to see. But how much of that was new manager bounce and how much of that is now faded? That's a question for us to think about. But also, Steve, is this now January a time where we perhaps weren't going to do that much business, but we're going to do more than we thought, because it's a chance for Dyche to reset and bring the players in that he wants? Hence the Dwight McNeil question. Because as much as people think he's not a very sexy player, not a very sexy name, but actually he's very effective, and we've seen how effective he is against us. So maybe we should stop being snobs and actually think let Dyche bring in the players he wants. And if he doesn't fancy Callum Window and he doesn't fancy McAtee, then get them gone and get them moved on and sell them. Where are you at in January? What do we need, Steve Battlemuch?
Well, I think the owner will give Dyche a couple of signings, because he has backed every manager he's had.
Just a couple?
Well, I just don't know where we've got the squad space. Well,
that's what I'm saying about who's going to go out. I'm thinking Bolly goes. I'm thinking Callie goes. McAtee goes. There's 3. Taiwo goes. There's 4. Ina's got to come back in as well, remember, to take one of those spaces. So we're down to 3 spots possibly available. Does anybody else go out of that lot? Does Douglas Luiz get sent back? These kind of questions we have to ask.
I don't think Luiz will go back unless there's something really around the contract and they're worried about the finances. The thing about all the players going is you've got to find somewhere for them to go. And And if they all go out on loan somewhere, then, the wage bill and the PSR and all that, I'm not an expert in all that, but it's going to stack up at some point. Now, maybe they're going to gamble and they're going to think, well, if, push comes to shove, we can sell Anderson in June and that'll balance the books. So, the gambler in Marinakis probably is that he'll chuck some money at it in January. But you've got to really find someone who will take Callum Owendo. You've got to find someone who will take McAtee. If they're the players that Dyche has decided he don't fancy, then you've got to give him a chance to bring other people in. But the difference between this and the first 2 seasons when we were in a relegation scrap is that we're two games away from qualifying for the knockout stage of Europa League. It's such a bizarre season. And we could be heading for that Tottenham scenario where we end up 4th bottom and winning the Europa League. Now, I'd still take that if we did finish 4th bottom,
100%.
But it is so small margins, isn't it? Because if we get overturned by Villa, if West Ham beat Wolves, you can go into the West Ham game with them needing a victory to go above us. Once you then drop into the bottom 3, it's harder to get out. So, especially when your game after that is Arsenal. So every point is vital now, isn't there? Now, we know that there is quality in this Forest side. You don't go to Anfield and win 3-0 if there's not quality in the side. You don't beat Tottenham 3-0 if there's not quality in the side. You don't give a good performance like we did and unlucky not to get a draw against City if there's not quality. What we're lacking is goals, and we've got to find a way of getting somebody in the box who can score those goals. Trouble is, it's the hardest position to fill. Those players aren't out there. And if somebody's really good, they're not let go in January by a club. So, that's where the recruitment team have got to find someone who can come in and make a difference in the box.
Igor Jesus is one of the strikers in the Premier League that's taken the most shots out of all strikers. Obviously not scoring anywhere near enough goals to shot ratio, but I think out of all the shots he's taking, the chance value of a lot of them is really quite low. So is he shooting too early? Is he shooting in places that he shouldn't be? Last night he had that one that kind of came to him fortuitously and he toe poked it and he just went wide. He's been unlucky with a couple of goals, one against Liverpool that was a good goal, one against Wolves that was someone else offside. So his stats could look a little bit better. We do value him. He is a good striker, but is he a number 9? Maybe he's more of a 10. Maybe that's what people are saying. He's more of the link-up man. We definitely need more goals. I think Woods, I wonder rather, would Chris Woods be scoring any more goals in this team? Because I worry about, I guess what I'm trying to say is I worry about the way that we're playing. We did carve Man City open on the break. And maybe last night we should have let Everton have the ball a lot more and played more of our low block, let them and try to hit them on the break. Trying to break teams down is not our forte at all. We do play better when we sit back and we're breaking and we're causing damage on the run. And we've seen that last season clearly with Elanga being a massive weapon for us. But Hutchinson and Backward can do that as well, I think, when they play. The hold-up play from Igor Jesus against Spurs was fantastic, but you need the players that are running off of him. And when Morgan's on his game, that's his forte. I use that word again, but it's just too inconsistent in our team, which means that we are too inconsistent in our results. And we can't afford to continue to just put in good performances. We now need to get results. That's the key for me. So I go back to what I said a moment ago. It's got to be a striker. A Sam Surridge, people might be thinking, Greg, you've been on the Kool-Aid or maybe drinking a bit too early. But, I just think sometimes it could work. He knows the club. He's been there. He's the kind of striker that has been scoring goals for fun. I know the MLS is very different to the Premier League. But if not him, then who? Who is it going to be? Because we cannot go into this into January or go into February and had a poor window, because I really do worry about us now. So to round things off, I want Richard, your predicted bottom 5 in the Premier League come the end of the season. Steve, the same for you. So in the comments, give us your predicted bottom 5. So that's from 16, 17. That's staying clear. Then 18, 19, 20 is obviously the relegation zone. So if you're in the comments and you want to join in, give us your predicted bottom 5. Be honest. If you think it's Forest, then so be it. Richard Spray, I've given you a little bit of time to think about this because I kind of just jumped this on you. But give us your predicted bottom 5 as it stands in your mind.
Okay. I mean, we've obviously got matches coming up, I think, away against Leeds as well as West Ham, and I'm hoping we'll be a little bit more stabilized and a little bit more effective by that point. I know I keep using that word effective. I would say let's have us in 16. We'll go Leeds 17, West Ham 18, Burnley 19, and Wolves obviously 20. Yeah,
I think Wolves are gone. They did put up a bit of a show last night to grab a point at Old Trafford. Which is always good to see that Man United don't win. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I think Wolves and Burnley are definitely gone. I think West Ham, us, and Leeds are going to be in that scrap till the end of the season. I think Bournemouth have got, a lot of good players, and they can still turn in a performance. I know they've dropped like a stone. They're going to sell Semenyo. But I suspect Bournemouth have already got 2 players lined up to replace him because of that sort of club where their recruitment's pretty good. So I think Bournemouth will probably pull away. I can't see anybody else getting dragged into it, unfortunately. So I think it is going to be us 5. I'd like to think we've got enough to get above Leeds, but I wouldn't rule it out that we could be, last game of the season, last two games of the season in that 4th bottom spot. We've just got to keep above West Ham at this stage. But, the longer we go in Europe, the tougher it's going to be. That's the reality. And because there will be that 2 games and all the rest of it. But, I can't sit here and say we're going to go down. I just can't as a Forest fan. That's why in my FPL last night, I didn't put Pickford in the team for Everton. And I would have had 10 more points if I had. But you've got to back your own team, and I think we'll just have enough to stay up.
Okay. Brucey says he thinks Wolves will go down with Burnley and West Ham, Leeds and Forest to survive just outside the drop zone. At Higgerty says 20th Wolves, 19th Burnley, 18th West Ham, 17th Leeds, 16th Forest. Our Everton viewer in the comments has joined in. He thinks it'll be Wolves, Burnley and West Ham to finish in the bottom 3 with Brighton and Leeds. So that means Forest, I don't know what it's the Everton fan who's beat us twice, home and away, and taken points off us. Thinks we might get out of even finishing in the bottom 5. So thanks very much for that, Stephen Dyer. Thanks for joining in the fun today as well. Brendan Johnson, yesterday was reported, looks like a fee's been agreed to go to Crystal Palace, but possibly Bournemouth trying to gate crash that deal. Maybe 1 or 2 others trying to gate crash that deal as well. We've talked about the idea of Brennan coming back to the City Ground. I would be in favour of that. Although, as I've said previously, I just feel that maybe he wants another move before coming back to Forest. Again, I don't know. I'm just guessing it's just a hunch. Maybe he wants to go and experience football elsewhere. Maybe he doesn't feel the timing's right. Because I think once you come back to Forest, you come back to stay and trying to see your career out there. So maybe he wants to come back a bit later on. He's still quite young, of course, as well. All right, guys, that takes us to the end of this episode where we look back on a disappointing night last night for Forest, losing at home to Everton. We go into the new year and we turn the page and we hope that we can do a reversal on what we did last year. We had a fantastic first half of the season and then we kind of fell away in the second half of the season as we entered 2025. We did quite well to start with, but then it kind of fell away from us. So we're going to try and hope that this time round, a poor first half of the season is reversed and 2026 brings more points for the Reds, more victories, and gets us moving up the table. Richard and I will be back, I think maybe tomorrow on New Year's Day. We're going to be previewing the game away at Aston Villa. which is coming up. They're all coming thick and fast. It's a game that Forest need to go into and to win, if they can, to get those points that we desperately need. I want to say a very happy new year to all of you. Hope you enjoy the festivities wherever you may be. Come on, you Reds.
Come join Greg and Richard right here on